Elham Tabassi, Chief of Staff, Information Technology Lab at the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and Andrew Burt, Managing Partner at BNH.ai. Welcome both to the Data Exchange Podcast.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Same. Thank you very much.
And we're here to talk about a new paper that just came out from NIST called the AI Risk Management Framework paper. And BNH is supporting the efforts of NIST in this area. So let's start with Elham by kind of putting some context for our audience. For people who aren't familiar with the National Institute of Standards and Technology, what is the purpose of papers and publications like this? And do you have any historical examples of similar papers?
Sure. Let me just start by saying a few words about NIST and who we are and what we do. So NIST is part of Department of Commerce, and as industry's national laboratory, we have a broad portfolio of research. We do everything from building the world's most precise atomic clocks to working collaborative with industry to develop standards for the use of robots in manufacturing, to help firefighters better prepare for and predict the behavior of wildfires, to investigate why buildings collapse, as our scientists already doing it in Miami, Florida. You mentioned AI risk management paper and ask why we are developing this, what's the driver for that. So like many of you, we believe that scientific and research innovations in emerging technologies, for example, AI, have potential to uplift and empower all people. Yet we all know that the use of these technologies could have some risks associated with individuals, organizations, and societies. So it's important to understand AI risk, their driver, what they are, at what stage of the life cycle they happen, and who gets impacted by them.
So, Andrew, you folks decided to get involved with this initiative. Do you have any further comments for our listeners who aren't familiar with NIST? So, is there a particular reason why you folks jumped at the opportunity to be involved?
Yeah, I would say, well, one, we're thrilled to be supporting, but two, I think I would just emphasize the importance of what Elham just said, which honestly is really like the reason why, this boutique law firm that we are, spend our time building and running, the reason why we exist, which is that there are all these really exciting technologies related to AI and analytics, but there are huge and unaddressed risks about how to actually deploy them in practice. And I think for a lot of your listeners who are a lot more focused with basically just, getting a model to deployment, how quickly can they do that? How fast can they optimize for things like accuracy and performance? Like that's the kind of bread and butter of, being a data scientist today. But as data science, as AI takes a more and more important role in the economy, as it starts making more and more important decisions, things like risk, exactly what Elham said, are becoming way more important. And I would even argue becoming central, if not more important than the actual kind of other values that these systems are being used to create. And so I think,
I guess, Andrew,
it,
I guess, Andrew, my question is, other groups could put out similar frameworks, right? So why were you particularly excited with NIST? So put NIST in even better context. Yeah.
Make Elham blush about the importance of NIST.
I was going to say because we are awesome, but go ahead, Andrew.
It is true that they're awesome. I think NIST is really interesting in a really unique position for a bunch of reasons. One is just like the type of expertise that exists at NIST is actually awesome and really interesting. I think it's a lesser well-known like government entity, but the folks that understand and know what NIST does put NIST on a really, really, really huge pedestal, and I think deservingly. And so I think for your listeners who might not be familiar with NIST, see AI ethics frameworks and, stuff for AI all over the place, but there really is only one NIST. And I think one way to look at that is just NIST's history of putting out guidance and frameworks and special publications in all sorts of areas. You can look at, I mean, we're talking today about the AI risk management framework. There are other special publications related to it. I would direct listeners to listen to. In the area of privacy and cybersecurity, NIST has done really amazing work. And so I think when there's an impossible technical problem and nobody knows how to solve it, but there needs to be an impartial organization really with the weight and expertise of like the federal government, that's where NIST comes in. So I think NIST is really perfectly positioned to do this. And it's one of the major reasons why we're so excited, about the work that NIST is doing.
So I guess my next question, Elham, is to you, which is basically, so you set out to do this risk management framework. So what were some kind of specific design goals? And so there's the design goals, like what makes a good framework, but also what's the overall objective for the reader?
Yeah. And Andrew, thank you so very much. And I was just joking saying that you're awesome. But if I can just say a few words about that, I want to say this to say everything that we do at NIST is with engagement and collaboration and engagement of the whole community. And that's really, really important to what we do, bringing the community, leveraging the wisdom and knowledge of that. And we can do that because we are trusted by industry and community. And we are trusted because we take our job really seriously, the integrity, inclusivity, excellence. These are all our core values at NIST. But also because of our non-regulatory nature, that allows us to build the trust with the industry and provide kind of objective guidance, eyeing and focusing on technical excellence. So we all want as Andrew said, we all want the system to be accurate. And that's where most of the focus, at least in the past 10 years, was to develop new techniques that are faster, better, more accurate. But beyond that, to build the trust, you want the system to be secure to the different vulnerabilities. We want them to be safe. We want them to be robust in terms of that they keep the same performance for the data condition environment not seen during the training. Explainability and interpretability, privacy, bias, all of these things, right? But what do we mean by each of them? We all have heard a lot about.
Yeah. So how specific do you get, and how prescriptive?
Specific we get, yeah. If you or your audience had any chance to look at the concept paper that we put out, and again, the process that we have is open for participation by all. We put iterations of the document and workshop for discussions and comments. So the first thing, how specific we get, the concept paper that we put out propose a approach, or the same approach for cybersecurity and privacy, which the structure is core, profile, implementation. Core is constitutes of functions, and our functions that we propose are map, measure, manage. In map, the guidance is to establish context, is to understand your risk, kind of enumerate your risk. We have a accompanying taxonomy of risk paper where we have defined each of them. So the idea is that first the context is established and understood, what AI capabilities, target uses, systems are part of discussions, who is going to be impacted by this, enumerate all the risk that can happen. And then for each of them, we want to provide methods, metrics, procedures for measuring them. What bias is, how measure that. What's interpretability is, how measure that. Guidance around the trade-off between all of them. If you're improving your bias, you may get the hit on security, right?
The second one is going to be challenging because that's a big topic in the academic research community, interpretability. But so the idea is, someone reads the document, and then they use that as a checklist, or what's the idea?
Thanks for that question. We are hoping not to have a checklist. We are hoping this to be a resource center. And again, I keep emphasizing on a interoperable lexicon because during my career, I have seen it many times that we're using the same term meaning two different things. So bring everybody together. You said interoperability is a big topic for academia. Yes, it is. And there are many different interpretation of what interoperability should be. Fairness, there are many definitions and metrics for that. So what we're trying to do is provide a resource center that provide a lexicon to talk about risk, gives guidance about what are the risks. Of course, we are not going to be able to enumerate all of them, but at least give it good categorizations.
So Andrew, you folks participated in the drafting of this paper. So what do you anticipate on your side? How are you going to use this particular paper? Are you going to, for one, are you going to share it with prospective clients and so on and so forth? So what's the practical impact of this paper for you?
Okay, so there's practical impact for us in our day-to-day, like you mentioned, client discussions. But then I think there's broader impact, and I can tell you the reason why we're so excited to be supporting this effort is less to do with our practical day-to-day, and it's more to do with just this really big gap. And we've discussed this, in the past and past podcasts and past private conversations. There's this really big gap. There's a really good article from about, I think, 2 years ago by the nonprofit Algorithm Watch called Paper Tigers. And it was an assessment, excuse me, I'm fighting off a cold, so I might need to pause to drink some water here. So the article basically did an assessment of all of these AI ethical guidelines that have been published by company after company. And if you are a frontline data scientist, these principles, these guidelines, these documents are pretty much meaningless. And we see that on a daily basis, that like data scientists who want to do the right thing are still really struggling. It's really, really not clear what to do. And so I think that this risk management framework, I think, really has the best chance of any other effort at helping to fill in that gap. And the one thing I would say is, Elham said this is not intended to be a checklist. So it's not like the paper is going to be published and then suddenly all these frontline data scientists are going to know exactly what to do. But I think my hope, and one of the reasons why we're so excited about this, is this paper will be published. It is going to be an ongoing open process. So it's not like just published once and then done. It's open. I think they're expecting lots of participation. I think it's again not like a one-time thing. So there's going to be drafts. But anyway, as this process evolves, what we're hoping for, and frankly what we're expecting, is this world of pretty chaotic AI ethical principles, all this stuff that's hard to use, is going to be a lot more consistent. I think this will form the foundation for that. And then I think that different organizations will be able to build upon it. And so that the world where there actually is a checklist, where there actually is some really, really concrete guidance that data scientists can follow confidently, that can fill this gap for frontline data scientists, I think the foundation for that is really going to be this ongoing open risk management framework that NIST is going to provide. And then, frankly, I think it's up to like us, like, the community, the BNH.ai, our clients, academics, applied researchers, all of that, to fill in the gaps and get to this checklist level. But I guess just to summarize, I see every day this really, 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 really important gap. And I think that there's been a lot of effort. There have been many attempts to fill it. And I think I'm extremely optimistic about NIST maybe pushing the snowball here down the mountain.
So at the level of practicality, the expectation is this paper will inspire data teams to get their act together. By what? By building their own tools based on ideas from the paper, or what? How do you think this is going to play out?
If I can jump in and say a few words about NIST is running a open, transparent process for development of the AI risk management framework. We started with a request for information. Every draft that we put out is open for public comment. We talk with everybody, and we are extremely grateful for the help of many,
How would Elham, how would you characterize at a high level who participated in the process? Is it mostly people on the compliance side? Is it hands-on people? So give us an idea. Researchers, companies, right? So,
yeah, happy to. So the request for information that we put out, by the way, everything that we receive, it's all posted on our website. So I just want to make a clarification that where we are extremely grateful for BNH's support and engagement and input. We are also getting input for almost everybody in the community. So that one thing. In the RFI, the responses to the RFI that we received, there is also a paper posted on our website that is summary of the RFI and has a graph on distribution of the responses that we received from different portions of the community. So interestingly, industry is or I think understandably, industry was had the highest ratio of has the highest portion of the responses to our RFI. Our workshop gets, participation of our workshops is usually around, thousands of the people, somewhere between 800 to 1100. I guess we are lucky that it's virtual, so a lot of people can attend the workshops. And then, the same thing for the comments on our documents. We hear from small, medium, large industry. We hear from civil society. We engage and hear from lawyers. All of them. But again, understandably, industry and technology providers has probably the larger set of the responses. But again, we do actively engage and reach out to all sectors. Particularly for this important work, the civil liberties.
Andrew, it seems to me, and maybe I'm off the mark here, but it seems to me that these topics in particular have not quite been internalized by data and AI teams, in the sense of it's still somewhat of a secondary thing, right? So their main thing is to get things out to production, and this is kind of still a secondary. The risks are there; they're aware of it, and they think about it. But I don't know if it's top of mind. And to the extent that it's not top of mind, maybe there's still people who specialize in this sort of things within data teams, right? The people who are much more passionate and care about it. So if that's the case, then how do you think this document in particular will increase kind of that sense of urgency?
I mean, increasing the sense of urgency for these issues is really important. I mean, honestly, it's one of the things I spend a huge amount of my time thinking about, because these issues are urgent, and they're only getting more urgent.
So first of all, do you buy my premise that it's still kind of not mainstream for people to really care about this a lot?
So I'm a lawyer, so I have a hard time making clear statements, but for this, I'll give you one, which is 100%. Yes, it's not mainstream. There are some exceptions with larger companies. In our experience, like there are a handful of tech companies, really well-resourced companies that can afford to just have people sitting on the side, just thinking about this.
They're like specialists still, right?
Exactly. But those specialists don't yet exist across the broader economy. So I mean, I would venture to say that most organizations employing AI or ML, most of them don't have access to these types of resources and expertise. Like right now, it's very, very hard to get an expert. I mean, it's hard to get an AI expert, period. And for that, there are talent wars and acqui-hires and all that stuff going on. But trying to get someone who understands AI and risk management well is just very hard in practice. And so I think even for frontline folks, like you're saying, who understand the risks, who feel the urgency, it's hard. It's not clear what they should actually do. And we find this all the times that the folks that are actually worried about this, some of them will try to track what's going on in the research and the applied research and academic communities, but it's just moving so fast that it's not clear what they should do on these issues.
Let me put Elham on the spot, and feel free to push back if you don't want to answer this question. But based on your work so far on this framework, Elham, are there 2 to 3 things that data teams should be doing more of today?
Yeah, I want to first say that this is a genuine invitation to join the conversations to all of the data teams to come to the table as we are developing this AI risk management framework and provide their questions, their input, what they want us to be, so that it can be useful to them. So the data, we all know that the data is fuel of the AI, and it's something that we I built a career on looking at the quality of the fingerprint images and the biometric images. So garbage in, garbage out is always correct for the machine learning and this field. So everything about data, what is the good data, what is the issues of the bias, how we figure out the issue of the bias in data, from where we are standing for the test. So there's a lot of attention on how to come with a good training data. It's even more important to come up with a good test data to make sure that everything that needs to be tested, there are examples for that. So there is no shortage of, I think, interesting problems and the gaps and good conversation that can happen. So this is my ask, this is my invitation to all of you that's listening to join this effort. Our workshop is open to everybody. Our drafts are out on our website for comments. And we are always happy to talk and listen to the ideas and thoughts. So data is really important. How to build the system is really important. How to understand how the system is going to impact other people's are all part of this discussion of the risk management. I hope I address your question. Answers your question.
Yeah. I know Andrew is big on documentation, so we'll assume that people should work more on documentation, documenting what they do, how they build their model, where the data comes from, and so on and so forth. So anything, anything else, Andrew, as far as based on having gone through this paper, any other concrete things that people should be doing right away?
You haven't thought about how you are going to measure it, describe it. There's not a lot that you can do. And one of the pitfalls that we see all the time, especially as it relates to fairness, but many other risks as well, is when data scientists do try to actually kind of manage some of these risks, it can kind of devolve into a very, very nebulous world where it ends up with data scientists basically arguing with each other about philosophy. And so I think having some clear, this borders into documentation, but having some clear framework and way that you're going to isolate each individual risk and then figure out what you're going to do to mitigate or manage it, I think is really like the central thing. And so you can do that in documentation, you can do it outside of documentation, but if you don't I'll rephrase it, if you're not specific about the risks you're trying to confront, it's basically impossible to actually minimize those risks. And so I think like specificity is key. And from what I understand about this document, I think that will be in there. But more generally, I think specificity is really central.
Are there lessons from cybersecurity? I say that, and I know that cybersecurity is far from a solved problem, right? So it's a high budget item and remains a high budget item within companies, but they have practices there around penetration testing, black hat, white hat kind of teams and so on and so forth. So are there lessons from that world that map over to this world?
I'm sure there are, as there are in, and we are very lucky to have our cybersecurity experts and cybersecurity team members and privacy team members to consult with and help us with development of the AI RMF. But there are other also fields, right? The whole discipline of risk management, the whole discipline of software engineering, all of them has relevance, and we are trying to make sure that we build on top of the lessons learned, knowledge gained,
or the control systems that fly planes, right? So
right. Exactly. What I was trying to say is that we are cognizant of that for the AI RMF too. So we're trying to be specific about roles and responsibilities and at the different levels of the organizations, and make sure that this guide is written in a way that's helpful, useful for organizations of tens of thousands of employees, but also small businesses of 3 to 5 people. And so we have a really big wish list of everything we want to get with this AI RMF, and many of them the state of the science and technology may not be there to do this. But again, what we have learned from our previous work is that as long as we do this at the highest level of integrity and technical excellence that we can do, and be open and transparent and engage the community, and go out of our way to make sure that we bring a diverse group to look at this and engage with this, we have mitigated and managed the risk of the failure. So that's what we are trying to do. So the biggest lesson from the previous work is to be open, transparent, inclusive of everybody out there.
So Andrew, put this in context. You mentioned this earlier. Parallel efforts in other countries, China, EU. So do they have their own frameworks?
You're going to make me create the ire of foreign government officials here, Ben. I mean, so they're certainly developing. What I would say is, and with all respect to those officials, I think the gap still exists. And well, I won't pick on any particular countries, despite wanting to, but I think there's been a lot of effort. I mean, honestly, there's been years of government officials and policy experts and all this stuff releasing these guidelines and trying to make a dent here. But I think ultimately it all goes back to that Paper Tigers report I mentioned from Algorithm Watch, which is all these principles, all these documents are really, at the end of the day, they're all aspirational. And I would actually argue, I think some of what we're doing, like literally right now, and some of what I do at BNH quite frequently, is bringing these communities together between frontline data scientists and policy legal. For the most part, these communities don't talk to each other. And that's why we have this problem where you have, paper tigers, you have ethical principles that don't actually do anything in practice, even though they sound good. And so I think what we continue to track is a lot of efforts that have really, really good intentions, but can't be operationalized, like Elham said. And I think that what is key to this and what is different is that I think NIST, because it's in their DNA, I think operationalizing guidance is the bread and butter of what NIST does. And so I think this will be different. I think it already is different. So I think that's what positions this effort in a way that is just completely different.
So I will place a link to the paper in the episode notes. And so Elham, you folks have a workshop coming up. Do you have dates?
Yeah, we have dates for the workshop. Our workshop is on March 29 to March 31st. The first 2 days of the workshop, March 29 and 30th, we are gonna go through the sections of the paper, the first draft of the AI RMF, and discuss it with the community and get their input and chart the next steps. The last day, we're going to do a deep dive on the issue of the bias in AI, and we will have a document coming out. We had a document released about a year ago, was out for public comment. Public comment period closed in mid-September, and we have revised and finalized that document that talks about bias in AI at different stages and different issues and impacts that that bias has on the use of the AI. I just want to say that how these documents are related. So we talked about the AI risk management framework, touching and talking about the various AI risks. So we have efforts, parallel efforts on advancing or understanding bias in AI. We have one on interpretability of AI. We have one on security of AI. And our goal is that, do these things in parallel, and all of them fit into the AI risk management, help us meet that January 2023 deadline that we have. I just want to say one thing, that just listening to Andrew about AIRMF expectation of people like Andrew and the community of this, I want to say that we know what a difficult task it is, and we know just the depth and breadth of the different topics associated with this, and the different experts that we have to bring in. So I just feel the pressure of that, but again, extending our invitations to join us in this open, collaborative, transparent process. Send us your comments, tell us what you don't like about it. We want it to be a useful thing for everybody. So March 29th to 31st.
So who can attend the workshop? Is it open to anyone?
Right, it is open to everybody. We don't have any participation cap. The targeted audience.
You don't have to be in the US, US based, right? Because it's virtual.
No, we do have international participation, right? We have, I think our last workshop that was in October, we had participation from 9 different time zones across the globe. The time is going to be 11 to 4 Eastern time each day. So we're opting for the shorter days.
So is it an interactive workshop like Zoom, or is it more like a broadcast webinar?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So when we did it with, you asked about other efforts. When we did it for other efforts, they were all, of course, in person, and we would break into breakout sessions in a smaller room and make it really interactive. We tried that for the virtual meeting, and with the number of the participation that we had, it didn't give us the same feeling and the same collaborative spaces as we wanted to. So the thing that we did last time, and we're going to repeat it again, is that first of all, every sessions, which is going to be in the visual format, are panel discussions. So it's not presentation for a long time. So we have different panelists, questions that they just get into the discussions, and then alongside of those panel discussions, we run Slack channels that allows participation by audience, and then the questions from the Slack channels get sent to the moderator of the panels.
Great.
We are trying to figure out what other collaborative tools we can use to make it more collaborative, and we are learning in that space.
And with that, thank you, Elham and Andrew.
Thank you, Ben. It was a lot of fun. Thanks.
All right.
Thank you.